Hey, Kathleen. Lisa, how are you? Got people coming from all over the place.
Good evening.
Hello, Lisa. Hello, world. Willie, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good, Glenn. Thank you. Nice to see you, man.
Dude. Hailey's back.
Hi,
Hailey,
Lisa.
Hailey, you did a great job yesterday. Thank you for your participation. We appreciate it.
Hi, Willie. Hi,
Hello,
Chloe. Hi, Chloe. Bonsoir. Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Look at that, Chloe. Hashtag, that's French. There you go. Okay, we're going to wait for a moment. Currently, we have about 28 in the room. Hello, Josh.
Hi, Lynn.
Hey, Lisa. Really? Hi, Glenn. A few troublemakers on here tonight, I see.
Oh, that's Willie. Willie's the South African troublemaker. I just wear the blazer. You know that, Lynn.
I wasn't picking on Willie.
Ah.
No, she never does. She never does, Ben. Don't worry about that. I'll get her back.
Hey, Donna, how are you?
Hmm?
Donna, how's your vacation?
It was very nice. Thank you.
Are you back? Or are you still there?
No, I'm back.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh. Hey, Hal. So is it Vigyan? Vigyan, where are you from? Team India. There you go. Excellent. Hey, Lauren. We got, let's see. All right. I'll tell you what, today is the, we're going to call this the grand experiment because, you know, we've done these coffee chats on Friday with Dr. Moritsugu. We had our donors from around the world on Sunday. Yesterday, we had our recipients from around the world. Tomorrow, we're going to have our transplant coordinators and nurses from around the world. And but today, we're doing an open house. We're doing a little bit of an open forum. And, you know, but let's see. And Lisa, enjoy your tea. So, so yeah, so I think what we're going to do is we're just going to have a conversation because, you know, this whole thing, this whole week has been about this global community. You know, it's really just, it's everybody sharing and everybody participating. And, you know, I thought there's been a lot of great stories over the last couple of days, a lot of great questions. You know, and I'll be the first to admit, you know, Kathleen and Kayla will tell you and stuff is I'm new to this. I'm new to the transplant world. You know, I've learned about this. I came as part of this assignment, but I've learned a lot. You know, I've come to appreciate it a great deal. I always knew it was a good cause, but I didn't recognize the hope and the empathy and the sincerity that really went behind the movement. And I've been genuinely touched by that. So what I'd like to do today, and I'm gonna try to do something a little bit different. If you're not part of the Houston sports staff, so why don't you go ahead and unmute your mic? So like Willie and stuff like that. Go ahead and unmute yourself. And there's some bad feedback coming from. Hey Nina, yeah Nina, we got some bad feedback. So what I want to do is I want to encourage a dialogue, and you know what we can do is. We can try it a couple of ways. We can like start in the chat, like maybe someone will post a question. So like Willie says, you know, Willie has a question that he wants to throw out. And maybe initially I'll serve as a facilitator and we'll try to do that. And ideally I want people talking back and forth versus me just kind of running it. But if we're running into feedback issues and stuff, you know, we'll go through. So, so first of all, why don't we take a minute? Why does everybody just type in where you're from? I know we have South Africa. I know we have Texas. Just what countries are you from real quick and type it into the bar, into the chat bar. We have South Africa, Canada, Houston, Texas. I know I've got some England in there. LA. Hi, Judy from LA. Welcome. We're glad you're here. Sue Randolph from California. Sue, is that Team SoCal? San Diego. Hi, Josh. How are you? Excellent. All right, so we got some good representation here. So some people are, starting at, it's at night. Some people it's still in the morning. We have India. Some people it's the middle of the day. So like I said, I will start today because this is, and yes, Donna, we have some recipients, so we'll get into that. I'll start this, what I start with every remarks, because I do this for good luck now. And I'm going to start with this with hello world. So we are together again for an hour. And we'll just kind of talk it out. So first question is Lisa. Lisa, my question, listening to the coffee chats, it seems to me that as though counseling is missing and needed for donor families and recipients alike. So does anybody want to weigh in on that? First of all, Lisa, did I express the question correctly, or do you want to open your mic up and re-ask the question?
Yeah, 5 minutes until my dinner's ready. Counselling is very, very expensive here in the UK. I'm a donor mum, all sorts of problems after donating as well. We lose my husband. And counselling was going to cost £1,000, which my own school wouldn't pay for me. They gave me 4 sessions on what's called the education budget. And then after that, I was left to myself. And just listening to recipients, listening to other people, lots of people need help and it's so expensive. Are there charities out there? Is there anything that the World Transplant Games could do to help us all talk? Because the only people that have helped me are people I've met through transplant sport, the World Transplant Games, British Transplant Games. People I've met through those 2 bodies have been fantastic because they get it. They really understand what I've been going through. What help can the World Transplant Games give people for counselling, whether they're recipients, donor families, I don't know. Or does everybody else get lots of help? Was it just me? And 5 years on, I am still struggling. And it's only people like Lynn, who's on here tonight, and other members who have been there if I've needed them. And you never know when you're going to need them. It's those darkest moments when a song comes on and it reminds you of things or other things that trigger it. And the World Transplant Games people, they get it. What else can we do to help? Or could I even do to help as a donor mum? Talk to other people going through the same thing. Just a question.
No, I think it's a fair question. I think from the direct answer is obviously I can't speak for the World Transplant Games Federation, but I think that would be, I think that's a fair question to ask them, to say, what support and what scope do they cover? I mean, I can't sit here and say, yeah, they can do that. I think what it becomes though is, I think it's a fair question to ask, and at least to be potentially pointed in the correct direction. So, I mean, I'm kind of ducking it a little bit, but because I honestly don't have the answer and I can't speak for them. Question from Willie: do people around the world find that their support team, family, friends, and colleagues are sometimes not included in the discussion and learning process of what is required by a person with a transplanted organ? So do people around the world find their support team are sometimes not included in the discussion? And I'll open it up for the group to just discuss or answer if anybody has any experience or point of view in it. Lynn, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a global issue that there's never enough support for what Lisa's mentioned already, and for the families going through the whole process of transplantation. Every country has different needs, so it's very difficult to generalize. And over here in the UK, we don't meet all those needs, as Lisa has mentioned. So it's really a postcode lottery quite often as to where you live, which hospital you're under, and what priorities the different transplant units place on family support, mental health support, physical support. And I think with transplant sport, the World Transplant Games, it's very often the physical support and friendships that are formed that seem to be the main factor that attracts everybody, but we all realize from the questions asked, there's a lot more required and a lot more needed.
Yeah.
So there's no easy answer.
Well, I appreciate that. And it seems like I'll take a tangent for a minute and then I want to come back to the question. It seems like what I've learned in the last few days, it's not as much the physical support and the emotional support as the mental support. It's really that 360-degree circle. Does anybody else have anything they want to weigh in on? And if not, I've got a separate question for Lynn. So would anybody else like to weigh in on the topic?
I can speak to my experience at Methodist Hospital in Houston. You know, they have meetings. We have to fill out a list of who our primary caregivers are going to be, you know, for the time when someone has to be with us 24/7. We also have to give them a list of secondary caregivers who are going to people who, you know, can drive us to doctor's appointments and that kind of thing. And the primary caregivers do have to come into the hospital before we're discharged, and we get I can't remember, maybe an hour and a half long discussion that is very broad ranging and really covers all of the topics. Methodist really does do a very good job of that. And I will say on the support, you know, Lisa mentioned, I think it's Lynn. I mean, you kind of find people who have gone through things that you've gone through, and it may not be an official support group. Methodist certainly has those, and I'm also a part of a Facebook group, I think that's Methodist heart and lung transplant recipients. But my biggest connection is with this group of people. One of the chaplains at Methodist Hospital, while I was waiting for my transplant, set up a heart transplant recipient choir. And there's only like 8 of us in it right now. And unfortunately, our first performance happened last February, and then we all of course got shut down in our home, so we haven't done anything. But you know, we've kept texting each other, and it's great to have, you know, that group of people. So I think if we can find some way just to get people connected, and I think what we're doing right now is great, that will be very helpful.
So let me ask a pointer for follow-up. How many people here, and you can just, you know, raise your hand on the raise the hand feature or whatever, or just physically raise your hand. How many people right now have what I call are part of formal networks, like an established organizational network? How many people are part of formal networks at this point? Okay. How many people are part of informal networks or casual networks? Like, you know, maybe it's just friends or kind of your loose collection of friends. Okay. And how many are both? And is anybody neither? Is anybody out there just doing it on their own? Okay. Okay.
Glenn, can I just say something?
Sure.
My question came really after Haley had her transplant. I found that there were a lot of groups that were focusing on the patient, and as Lisa also I think said also that there's the people around the patient sometimes are neglected. They and we almost started a support group for the caregivers, because if something goes wrong with the patient, with the person who has had the transplant, those people are the ones that are almost the first responders, if you want to call it that. They need to know what is going to go, what is happening, and they need to know how to respond. And we just found in South Africa that there's a real need for that, people to almost have a support group for the carers around the organ transplant patient.
No, that's a great point. Would anybody like to weigh in on that or add to that? I'm seeing a lot of nods. So.
Yeah, Willie, I mean, I totally agree with you. And again, it depends on location, priorities of the hospital, etc. I think my unit, we recognized that. So we did have informal support groups for the carers, because after the transplant, once everyone goes home, it's only really the patient who comes back long term, and they come back on their own, and the carers don't normally come with them after a while. So they're left there out in the community, and they don't get the same support as the patient gets. And some patients don't discuss everything with their carer. So I totally get the isolation that carers feel. But it's a matter, I think, of prioritizing the need, finance, and making time. And sadly, resource comes into everything, and there never seem to be enough people to deal with all the needs of not just the patients, but their families as well. So those are the issues. Yes, there's a need, and it has to be dealt with, I guess, locally to begin with, because it's easier for the transplant team to deal locally than nationally on this. But yeah, I feel for everyone, the carers, definitely. The patients do get much more attention and care than the carers.
Good. What I'd like to do is we have a long list of questions, so I'd like to go ahead and continue to move forward. And actually, Lynn, this one came from you, so I'll go ahead and keep your mic open. Maybe you can do a follow-up. Lynn had a question. Does anything know anything about kidney protection shield or belts? Where to purchase? Is it necessary? So Lynn, do you want to add to that, and then we can look for a response?
Well, actually, Meredith, your Meredith, had actually emailed me from one of an American lady in Houston who was asking the question. So Meredith brought me into the discussion, and it would appear that this lady has been looking for it for her 15-year-old son who plays lots of sports. I don't know what sports, and she may be. Are you on the call?
I'm the mom that wrote the email because of the coffee chat yesterday. I wrote a question to is it Hailey from South Africa? She wrote about she talked about how she is an advocate for recipients to be more involved in sports. Well, my high school son, so I'm in the pediatric world, which is completely different than the majority of the conversation that I've heard on all the coffee chats. I love everything I'm hearing. The pediatric world is a little bit more, I would say, isolating in that HIPAA plays such a huge role, and there isn't the ability to share great information with other families because you can't get their information, and it has to do with the way the hospitals are able to share. So as far as the kidney transplant belts go, my coordinator sent me a link for a company that's based out of England. So I went online, I was so excited, I went to buy it, and it said they only ship in the EU, period. And I wrote the company, and they said, sorry, that's all we do. We will not ship to the United States. I don't know why. So I thought yesterday, well, I'm gonna ask Hailey in South Africa if they have any ideas, if she does. And then Meredith connected me to you. So that's our son loves everything. The recommendation has been for him to wear a motocross belt, which we have done before because he likes soccer. He likes, he loves everything. He loves scootering. He's kind of a push it to the limits kind of kid. And motocross belts, they're just not comfortable. So this belt that I sent you the link for is supposedly more comfortable and more durable and blah, blah, blah. So,
all right, Glenn, can I perhaps answer something about that? If Kath, if you have a look on the WTGF website, you will see that there's a company in Israel that have developed a belt, a protection belt, and it apparently is very good. So perhaps if you go to WTGF.org website, and there's a link there to this company in Israel that have developed this belt, and a lot of people are using it, and they have found it very, very good for them.
Okay, I will. Thanks.
Great.
So I thought, Kathy, having just got the email this afternoon from Meredith, I would use this forum to just put it out there. So that's great. I did know about the Israel one. I also know that I've been very involved with pediatrics for the last 35 years. We've been transplanting peds in this country plus. So, and they're very much encouraged to join in sport, but so they do get support, and the families do, in the actual sort of transplant games and events that we organize for pediatrics as well as for the adults as well. But there is a lot of discussion as to how much need, usefulness there is for the kidney transplants. And some of the surgeons and the physicians would say, just get on with it. Soccer, most of the injuries, you don't get abdominal injuries in soccer. You get knees and ankles and legs and shoulders. So we started transplant soccer here, I think about 5 or 6 years ago. And the majority of them do not wear the shield. But saying that, it is a personal choice. And we've taken transplant children skiing and snowboarding, and, you know, people do hang gliding and jumping out of airplanes. So, you know, this is their life to lead. But if you feel safer and feel that you need this, the WTG one that Willie just mentioned is worth looking at. But the one in the EU, my only thought is, I'm happy to buy it and post it. That's not a problem. But quite often they need to be fitted. So I'm not sure about the sizing and fitting because I've never looked into it. But I'm happy to, and we can communicate offline anyway.
That sounds great.
If you wish.
Yeah, and if Lynn and Kathleen, if you want to type your email addresses in the chat bar, then you guys can share that information. And
Great.
Next question from Donna in Houston, Texas, USA. And she's coming from I'm interested to know, as a transplant coordinator, what motivates a recipient to get involved in the games, the World Transplant Games, and how did you first learn about them? So, you know, obviously, if this thing called COVID wasn't here, we'd all be in Houston right now, and we'd be competing and hugging it out and sitting in rooms and sharing coffee and crying together and stuff like that. But Donna would like to know, what motivates a recipient to get involved in the games, and how did you learn about them? Does anybody have any thoughts?
Good question, Donna, especially since you're a team leader.
You know, it's one of the things that we've struggled here with a little bit is, you know, some people get that this isn't just about the athletics of it. And some people say, well, you know, if I'm not an athlete, I don't want to participate. And you know, the first time I took a team back in 1994, afterwards, once people participate, they get it. They get the community, they get the, you know, meeting their people, as one of my moms talked about. So I'm curious how, as transplant, as medical professionals, how we could get more people involved in the games and make these even bigger, and, you know, on a national and on an international level.
In South Africa, and especially in the region where I am, and also where Herman Stein is, we invite the families and the recipients to a social gathering, and then we play petanque. Now, French bull. Now, I don't say it's a very easy thing to do, but that is the way, in a very relaxed sport and social atmosphere, that we then build communication, and from there, they get introduced into different sports. So we use that kind of social activity linked with petanque to get our people interested.
That's great. Thanks, Hailey. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Hello.
Go ahead. Yes, Vigyan.
Yeah, you know, here in India, I got to know about the transplant games through an organization, Organ India. So they were here yesterday, Sunaina and, you know, Karhun Nanda also, who was one of the panelists. And I, you know, participated in the transplant games in the hospital where I got the transplant done last year in February 2020 also. I found it very encouraging because you get to meet people, share your experiences, get to know, because otherwise if you know, just be on your own, don't meet, you know, recipients or givers. So you just, keep on thinking, and the only interaction you have is with the doctors or the caregivers only. But by meeting other people, like I'm meeting, this is the third coffee chat session I'm having. I find it very encouraging. And when you get to know that people are here more than 40, 50 years after transplant, so you feel very hopeful. Otherwise, in India, the life of the organs after transplant is not, very long. Average life is less. So that motivated me to, participate in the games and to come to the coffee chat sessions also.
Excellent. Anybody have any thought? Lynn, you have your hands up, and then I'm going to go ahead and move on because we've got about 15 questions in the queue, and I want everybody to have a shot today. So Lynn, go ahead.
I think it's marketing that's so important in the transplant units. And certainly with ours, you need to have someone who can be in the hospital supporting the whole ethos, and word of mouth seems to be the best way. We tried to pay for some of our nurses and medics to come to our British transplant games so they could see firsthand what goes on. Yes, we do concentrate a lot on the social. So we have team sports and family sports. So the siblings get involved, all the, for the children, children of adults and siblings of the pediatric group. So it's trying to be inclusive, but for the adults, trying to get them into it. And they're not sporty. They say that, I don't do sports. I just play golf. Well, great, play golf, or I fish. So when you just need to market, and that's our problem here, marketing in the units and having getting the medics and nurses and physios involved so that they can see firsthand how amazing it is. We do donor walks, and just one of our events is walking. So that is our way in, unlike Haile with Patonk in South Africa. We just try and encourage first timers, why don't you just come and do the walk? 3 kilometers, maybe 5 at the most. So, and that's how we bring them in. And yes, once someone's just said, once they've been, they're bitten and they're sucked in, and you never lose them because they've been part of it. I'll be quiet now, Glenn.
No, this is great stuff. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, if I could, Glenn,
Sure,
in
Dennis.
Canada, we have the Canadian Transplant Association. And what we do is we go to all the transplant centers and always put the proper flyers up and everything to let people know about our national games as well as world transplant games. And since I've been competing since 1980, before CTA, we really upped our numbers to go to the games, different people all the time. Some come back, some say it's too competitive, but the reality is getting to the transplant centers, there's the only way that you can actually get people involved. Because if you don't get to them there, you'll never get to them any other way.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving forward, this is from Kathleen. Boy, here's the $1 million question, guys. What can we do to better educate about organ donation? And that could literally take the next 30 minutes and probably the next hour on Friday, but we'll throw it out there. Kathleen asked it, and Kathleen's a friend of mine, so we're going to go for it. What can we better do to educate about organ donation? Or, as important, what if, like Dennis just talked about, with the pendant transplant centers and literally going directly to that regarding the games.
Where I just wonder, like, I've heard some people from different countries, their countries handle just organ donation in general differently than we do here in the United States. Like, I wonder if we're missing something, or what are the numbers in other countries? Is there a country that has higher organ donation than we do in the United States? Or I just wonder what it is. We're not closing that gap.
Anybody have any thoughts, comments?
It is true, Kathleen, the numbers. So in Spain, for instance, they have to opt out versus in the United States, we opt in to be a donor. And so their numbers are, I don't know, somewhere around 40 or 50,000 compared to 114,000 on the waiting list in the US. But we also have more populations, so you got to weigh that out too. But yeah, so I think you're right. In some countries, it's probably the numbers are better.
Okay.
I sometimes think, sorry. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I'll tell you what, Lynn first, and then I guess Haile, and then I want to just, guys, I have like 3 different pages going, and I know people have raised hands. So I'm going to go back and ask anybody who raised hands earlier just to circle back. So Lynn, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, education. It's education again, resource and having the people to educate the public. And that's what Spain did very well. And they're the model for Europe. They're still the leaders. And they threw a lot of money into it, and they had transplant medics in every intensive care. So that takes up a lot of resource. The UK is not leading at all in it, but we are improving. And it's the education of the public to have that discussion in the chat. So, you know, every state in the US is slightly different, I know, and some of them are really, really good. And they all have their own challenges with distance and transportation of organs, which is limiting for some of them. So, but I know some of the states are really very, very active and have high numbers, and some of the other states have lower numbers. You live in an enormous country. We can't even get it right in our tiny little UK. So, but we're opting out now means we will see a difference. We've been doing it only for just over a year. And I think, you know, but you can't just change legislation without education. So it's education is most important before legislation, is what we find over here.
Understood. Hailey, and then I want to go back to Judy had her hand up a while ago, so I want to go back to Judy. Hailey, any thoughts?
Me first. No, we can target people in shopping centers, and you can target them with walks and whatever, but we've decided to use two different target groups also. The one are school children, and the other one are old age homes. Now, the first question is always, how old should you be to donate? But what we found is that when you target school children, and I go for a whole week to one school, run all the matrics or all the grade 10s through sessions, they tell their parents and they then spread the message. When we go to the retirement villages, they tell their grandkids, because the group between 35 and 55, you very seldom get because they're working. So those are the two groups we focus on now.
Perfect. Thank you. Tell you what, 3 people have raised their hands. And like I said, I'm running about 52 people right now on multiple screens. So it's kind of keeping all the plates in the air. Judy Rice, you had something you wanted to weigh, or I'm sorry, Judy Race, you had something you wanted to weigh in on earlier?
Yes. Yeah, I just very quickly, I just wanted to answer the question. I'm a transplant recipient, and I think somebody said, as a recipient, why do you participate in the games? And it's a very simple answer: because I can. As a recipient, it's the last thing in the world I ever expected was to have a heart transplant. And I'm just so in awe of this whole community and everybody I see and everybody I've met. But I'm just so thrilled that I'm physically able to walk a 5K or bowl or hula hoop or any of these things. So that's why I participate, just because I'm so happy and so grateful that I can. And then to answer the question, how did I hear about it? I had my transplant at the UCLA Medical Center, and every year or so they do a symposium with doctors and nurses and pharmacists and nutritionists, and have sort of a mini trade show. And that's where the Transplant Games had a booth, and that's where I first heard about it a few years ago.
Gotcha. That's super. Tell you what, Dennis, you had your hand up earlier. And I know you kind of gave me your point about the transplant centers. Was there anything else that you wanted to add in?
Yeah, just that the U.S. has done a phenomenal job with your own U.S. games in the past. I mean, the very first games were sponsored by the Kidney Foundation, and the Kidney Foundation has been doing an incredible job there. You get 5,000 athletes. You're limited to 250 athletes when it comes to Worlds, and you've always met that number. And I mean, I've been to so many games that I can attest to that. So there's only so many people that these countries can send, and there is the upper limit. I believe it's 250, Lynn, if can correct me if I'm wrong. But the U.S. has always had one of the most complete teams to participate at games. So you guys are doing everything right.
There's no limit now, upper limit, Dennis.
Okay.
You can, yeah, the more the
But in the
merrier.
past- Yeah, the pass was 250,
Yeah,
right?
historically there was at some point, you're right. You know, you and me have been around a long time, Dennis, so
We
things
have.
have changed a little bit, and thank goodness, but
Looking great, Lynn.
Going back earlier, Nina Fort, you had your hand up. Would you like to, anything you want to add to us?
Yes, we have two Zooms going on here, so I'm closed back off in the bedroom, so I won't interfere with the other one. As far as finding out about the transplant games, my center, which is Mason Transplant Center out of Piedmont, Atlanta.
Would you like to take a moment? We'll come back to you.
They have support groups pre-COVID. And at those support groups, they had people, you know, mentors that would come in and share their experiences. So when I began to attend those, you're only required to attend one. I went to as many as I could because every meeting, you know, was a different bag of tricks. You had different people, different questions, different mentors would come and share their stories, which in some instances would scare you, but in other instances gave you hope. So I wanted to become involved in the transplant games for that very reason. I was never an athlete as a child or a young adult. I took up running at 55. And when my liver decided it was done, I couldn't do anything. I mean, it was horrible. I lost all my muscle mass. Trying to gain it back is crazy. So being able to participate is a true gift. And the transplant team with their support groups, they're very good about sharing all of that information about the transplant games, and the mentors all attend and are excited about it. So that was how I found out about the games. And then in response to the question about finding donors, education is important, yes, but making it easy to sign up, making it a no-brainer, to me, is what makes, I think Georgia does very well with their transplant volunteers and their donors, because it's so easy to become one. You check a box when you get your driver's license, you check a box when you register to vote, you just check a box if you want to be a donor. You don't even have to think about it. You don't have to go someplace special to sign up for it. You just check a box, and that just makes it so simple. And they make it marked on your driver's license. So on top of the education of why it's important, I think making it really easy to sign up to be a donor is as important. And that's all.
Great, thank you. Nina, thanks for sharing, and hopefully you'll take a minute and read the comments in the chat section, because there's a lot of people are reaching out to you right now. I want to switch gears for a second and just ask this question, and and I'll open this up to the group. What can we do to better support living donors? What can we do to better support living donors? And let me call on some people that have been kind of watching from the sidelines. So Heather, are you online? Any thoughts on what we can do to support living donors? the problem is when you're in my class, I tend to call on people halfway through the class. So, you know, the professor's coming out of me. Heather, is there anything you'd like to add?
Not really. I was lucky enough to have a live donor, and she approached me when she knew I had kidney failure. And she's always just said that we were meant to be. We were, you know, like we're soulmates and we're part of each other now. And it's just been such a positive experience. She's a nephrologist nurse, and we go and do talks. I'm one of the guests that we do talks through her hospital, and just trying to get more people into both being more knowledgeable of organ donation and what it's like to be a recipient. So it's all just been such a positive experience. And one thing I didn't know was I didn't realize that I could donate if I pass away. I thought because I had a transplant, you know, I couldn't donate any of my other organs, but I have found since that I can. So knowledge, you know, you just learn so much from going on calls and meeting people. It's just phenomenal. And I went in the Canadian transplant games as a person that really, you know, in my later years didn't do that much. And when I did shot put, I did ball throw, I did swimming, which I hadn't done for years, and the walk, and I got 3 medals. So it shows you anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can. And I'm now 72, so I did that at, you know, 68.
Sure. That's great. Thanks for sharing in. Anybody else want to answer the question or jump in? You can just shout it out, because like I said, I'm bouncing back and forth. Okay. So we've talked a lot about the human element of this, and we've talked about awareness, and we've talked about promotion and stuff like that. And, you know, I want to shift this a little bit. And this is a question that came from one of the people. One of the people on the phone today, and it's really kind of talking about the business aspect of it a little bit. And the question is, sponsorship is vital to raise awareness of transplant sport. Thanks to all our sponsors, and shout out today to Texas Medical Center, Memorial Hermann for the World Transplant Games. Thanks to all the sponsors. However, we need famous people to be part of this to promote. Ideas, ellipsis, question mark. Sponsorship is vital to awareness of transplant sport, thanks to all our sponsors. However, we need famous people to be part of this to promote. Ideas, please share. And I'll open it up to the group. Anybody wish to weigh in?
I think, Glenn, if I could, sorry, hello, Lynn,
Yeah,
give me one moment,
Willie,
then I'll give you a lot of
And I
time.
believe as a Kehoe had his hand up, so I'll go after that. And like I said, if you wish to be called on, like I said, just type your name in and that'll get to me and I'll call on you. So Willie.
Okay, Glenn, I think to answer in short, the problem is that people tend to want to be private. A lot of people that have had transplants, they're quite happy for people to know that they've had a transplant, but they're private in the sense that they won't go out in public. And I think that's what your question alluded to, is that we need the well-known people to actually be out there on the podium, behind the lectern, and telling people, and be on radio, be on television, be on stage, and actually sell the message. But it is a very private thing, and a lot of people don't feel comfortable about being out there.
Okay. Lynn, thoughts? Yeah, Lynn, your mic.
You muted me. Anyway, I do agree with
me. Jessica's didn't take the hit on that one. I'm not smart enough to know how to mute anybody, but you know, we apologize. So go ahead.
I agree with Willie totally. And we've we try and find people. We do have a very well-known soccer player who's had a kidney transplant. In fact, there's several who've had kidney transplants, amazingly, and not every well-known person is actually the best ambassador. When you have people looking up to them and hanging on their every word, it hasn't always been a constructive support sometimes to have a well-known person. We have one who's refusing to have the vaccine. So that's gone out on national discussions, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the sort of ambassador we want. So again, I think one has to be quite selective if you have people offering their services, that they're actually going to be positive and supportive. So but they do attract publicity, and as long as it's good publicity, but that's always the bit of a risk that's taken.
Excellent. Is it Kehoe or Kehoe? Did you wish to join in? I saw your hand
Yeah,
up.
Kehoe is my name. Can you hear me there? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Kehoe is my name. In Ireland here, we're a small nation, but we use very popular people on radio and television to highlight, for example, Organ Donation Week. And then when it's coming up to get our Team Ireland or games, we will quite often end up on one of their shows, a live show, and people can see that, we're just ordinary people, but we have transplants. We're ordinary, but we're not ordinary. I never am afraid to say I have a kidney transplant. I'm 38 years transplanted now. I'd like to say hello to Lynn and to Dennis. I recognize you from the games that I've been at, and it's great to see you.
You too.
Excellent, thank you.
But what we do is we try to get people that are popular on television or radio or in sport. Quite often they will step forward and be very positive about the advantages of taking part in sport for health, both mental and physical, that goes with being a transplant recipient.
Excellent, thank you. Dennis, I saw your hand up. Would you like to weigh in?
Sure. So if Willie and Lynn remember, in 2003, Nancy, France, we had Larry Hagman, and he was the kind of the ambassador. And that was really helpful to those games. Also, this past week, you had Eric Compton, an American golfer who's had 2 heart transplants, competing in the Schwab Open there, and he did phenomenal. It would have been nice if he would have been there now. He might have been able to come over to the games. It's also great for Newcastle. Lynn, you guys had a professional golfer. You had one of the squash. I got to meet one of the top squash players from the UK in the world. And that was inspiring to the athletes as well. So sometimes just even bringing a high profile individual to these games for the athletes is an amazing thing. And I think that should be done more.
Okay.
Yeah, I think to receive a medal from a professional athlete in the sport that you're competing in is amazing. And I know you're quite right. Our athletes just love it. And I think we liaise with the governing sporting bodies because they know the professional athletes, because they've trained them. So they're the ones who help us bring some of those ones in. But some of them want lots of money and we don't have the money. So that limits the numbers that come through. But fortunately, some of them aren't too cutthroat about it. But yeah, it's great. We also have our donor families presenting medals. So, and that is the best for our athletes, is having a donor family member presenting medals. That's just amazing on both sides.
Excellent. I want to shift gears and go back a little bit. Donna, you said you wanted to make a short comment regarding donor family support.
I did, and I just wanted to say I was very moved by Lisa's coffee chat the other day, and her comments regarding support for donor families and things like that. I've worked on both sides of this picture. I was a donor coordinator for many years, and I've been a recipient coordinator for twice as many years. And I think the biggest thing, whether you're a donor family or you're a recipient, is that you need to ask for help. Especially on the donor family side, I have seen so many families, in the initial year, 2 years or so, and then, the world thinks you should get over your grief. And it just doesn't happen. Grief doesn't end, it changes. And it's an evolving process. So I think people need to feel comfortable enough, and whether it's their OPO, for recipients, if it's their transplant center or it's leaning on other recipients or donor families, you need to ask for that help. because the grief does not end, or the, you know, caring for a loved one who's had a transplant, it doesn't end. It's an ongoing process, and you need to be able to reach out for that help. And I've actually been messaging with Lisa back and forth, and said to her, you know, maybe this is another way for her to continue Tom's legacy, as she's talked about, is, you know, maybe she's the catalyst, because if she's still hurting, there's lots of other donor families out there who are hurting and are not talking about it either.
Great. Thank you for sharing. I just wanted to read, this wasn't a question, but I wanted to read a statement. This came from Monica. It says, I am a donor mom and I immediately joined Life Gift as an ambassador of hope. It has been a phenomenal experience and I have made so many friends that are donor families and recipients. We help each other and we have lots of opportunities to talk about organ donation in our community. And I believe this is a Texas-based, I believe. Christina Ruiz Healy is amazing and keeps us involved and feeling productive. So what I take from that is that statement, and basically what I've heard from other people today is it's really setting up that feeling and establishing that feeling of community, whether that is a formal feeling of community or a network that you establish, or, you know, face it, today, you know, we all just made 51 new friends. And, you know, some of us knew each other before, some of us didn't. You know, I know a lot of you guys have been to games together. Some of this is our first rodeo. So really, you know, this is important. And I encourage the dialogue. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I do have a little bit of housekeeping at the end. Does anybody have any other questions that they'd want to play? I think I've blown through pretty much all the questions. So anybody have any thoughts they want to share? Anybody want to jump in? Let's see. Kayla, any thought? Kayla Lehman, any thoughts today?
Hi, everybody. Great to have everyone participate. I applaud donor families and the recipients. I'm a recipient 11 years, and sports has always been very important to me. So the games bring it out. It's a great platform to share the need for organ donation and to support each other. So keep doing what you're doing, and I'm proud of all of you. Thanks, Glenn.
Thank you. Let's see. I see Sue Randolph in the lower left-hand corner. Sue, is there anything you'd like to add? And Dennis, I'll get you in a second. Okay, I'm not hearing from Sue. Dennis, would you like to jump in?
Yeah. So Glenn, I had my first transplant in 1979. I've been doing this for 42 years, and the same questions we had, the same way of trying to educate people back then is the same as today. We haven't really grown enough. The transplant games have helped a lot, but it's trying to educate the people. In Canada, in Ontario, our province, they say there's 85% that are willing to donate, yet we only have 35% of the population registered. I don't know the answer, but it's been the same for the last 42 years that I can see. The one good thing is we should all be proud of, we honor our donor every time we compete or we talk about our experience. We are honoring our donor. And that has to be the thing is everybody, every time you tell your story, you're making an impact on somebody else. And that's what I say is most important.
Totally agree.
Well put. Well put. Thank you. I'm seeing from Kathleen Gerlach, I'm seeing her sitting there and I'm seeing a lot of head nodding today, Kathleen. So
well, I've been agreeing with everything that everybody says. I mean, the most important people, of course, are our donors. I've been participating in the games with Dennis since 1980. I think I've only missed 3 World Games. It's always been an honor to go to these games and honor my donors. And my first transplant was 30 years, and it was a deceased donor. And the second one right afterward is a living donor for 15 years. So I've been alive an extra 45 years because of my donors. I do go now. I was a teacher and now I go to schools now that I'm retired. And one wonderful way to promote organ donation is to speak to the high school students through their health classes. So I've been doing that for the last 15 years after I retired. Not so much this year because of COVID, although we did a few Zooms through Long Island Trio. So we're able to do some through the Zoom classes. And hopefully we'll be resuming that again when things are safe again. But, you know, it's every year when I go to these different games, whether it's the US Games or the World Games, it's just renewing friendships again.
And every year has been a wonderful experience, different. It's getting bigger, it's getting larger. It's harder to find my friends amongst the different groups, but it's just, and it's an experience that you can't really always describe unless you've done it. And so I thank you always for everything that you guys do to promote this. I appreciate it.
That's excellent. Thanks, Kathleen. And I'm getting a thumbs up from Willie there. So I think it's well said. Give me one moment. Apologies. This is what me talking and typing at the same time is, always dangerous. Anybody have any, like I said, we're wrapping up on close shortly. Anybody have any final remarks? Any thoughts? From Lynn Holt, it says, check out organdonation.nhs.uk website, as there are presentations that can be used in schools. So there you go. So check your chat session. Monica, did you want to weigh in on anything? I see, even though you're just shaking the head, just going with the phone. I got it. Okay. Well, guess what, guys? We blew through an hour, and we could probably do a couple more, knowing this group. I think this group likes to talk. So, but there will be a couple other opportunities. So I wanted to go ahead and maybe do a little bit of commercial time. First of all, tomorrow at noon, we're going back on the noon Central Time. We have our final panel discussion with Coffee Chat. We're going to have transplant coordinators and transplant nurses from around the world. I believe we have representatives from the United States. I know Lynn's going to represent the UK. We have Trilly from India. So I really encourage you all, we've had phenomenal turnout, starting with Dr. Moritsugu, rolling into a Sunday chat. I mean, people were showing up for a Sunday chat, and then with the donors and then the recipients. So we've had really just great attendance, and it's truly inspiring. So remember, tomorrow we have transplant coordinator and nurses tomorrow. That will be at noon. And then on Friday, we're going to have another one of these open houses, open forums, for a chance to come back one more time. It's funny, when we were talking this morning, it's like, or was one people going to come? Was 10? I never expected 55 people to be in this room. And I'm honestly blown away by your sincerity. I'm blown away by your stories. And I'm really just to listen to people talk, and whether it's sharing practical information or emotional support, we're here for you, and we want to encourage the dialogue. So reminder, we have transplant coordinators and nurses tomorrow at noon. We'll have another open house on Friday. And then last but not least, we have the closing game celebration on Saturday. That is at, I believe, 10 a.m. Central Time, Houston time. And it's our one chance to get together and have one more big virtual hug. Another questions come up from time to time also on social media, digital media. Are these going to be available? Yes, they are. So after the games are over, we will make these chats available. So again, I always ask for an hour. I take 55 minutes. So from the United States, thank you. We appreciate your time. Hopefully we'll see you tomorrow for transplant coordinators and nurses. We'll see you back for another open house on Friday, and then the closing celebration on Saturday. So
Glenn,
yes,
can I interrupt you, and just on behalf of the WTGF president, Chris, I spoke to him about an hour ago, and he just mentioned that he was flying from Perth to Sydney in a 4-hour flight, and of course he apologized not being here, but he wishes everybody a wonderful few days, the last days of the 2021 World Transplant Games. So we really look forward to the last few days.
No problem. Thanks, William. Thanks for sharing that. Dennis, you had your hands up, and then Janice, I'm going to give you final words since, you're my boss and I do that. So anyway, Dennis, any other thoughts? I saw your hands up, or that may have been from before. I guess Dennis is good.
Sorry, it must have been from before. But anyways, the only thing I want to say is this has been fantastic. This is what we need. We have a common bond, and when we get together, I'm getting emotional. And Lynn knows that, me and the others, Kathleen especially. This is what we need to do. Thank you so much.
No problem. Zoom is a good thing. One of the few good things that ever came out of COVID was like Zoom. Who knew? Who knew Zoom was a thing? So Janice, you get the last word.
No, thank you all for just sharing your stories and being vulnerable. I think it helps others, and for you to share honestly is just wonderful. I've been in touch with Chris Thomas as well. He's been watching all the pictures being posted online. He's just really thrilled with how the world has been able to come together even apart. So thank you all, and thanks for joining these calls. And Donna, Kayla, I don't see Tricia, but our subcommittee and Glenn, thank you so much for the time you've put into putting these chat sessions together.
Thanks, Janice. And again, thank you to the World Transplant Game Federation, to our LOC, to the subcommittee, to Texas Medical Center, Memorial Hermann, all our sponsors, and really everybody that's been participating in this. You know, you are the rock stars. And, you know, I encourage you, if you haven't logged your 5K yet, get it in. I think I saw reverse, what's it, walking on hands for 5K the other day. I couldn't believe it.
You know, we need a few more people because we don't want to get stuck in the ocean. So
Yeah, I know.
everybody keep encouraging.
Yeah, we got to get across the Atlantic and into Houston. But you know, encourage you, build the teams, log it. Let's get it in. Let's unlock those bears, put them in kids' hands, and you know, let's just keep doing it. And we'll see you all tomorrow. So have a good day, everybody. Take care.